Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
You know, it's pretty terrifying to think about a disease like Ebola, right? I mean, its outbreaks have been just devastating. But imagine if we could stop it with just a simple pill. That's the kind of hope that we're diving into today.
Yeah, it's a really promising development for sure.
Absolutely. We're talking about a potential game changer, an oral medication that could completely revolutionize how we deal with this deadly virus.
Exactly. It could really sidestep all those logistical nightmares that we face with current treatments.
Right. Think about it. Getting those treatments to where they're needed, keeping them cold, having trained personnel. It's a huge challenge.
No kidding, and that's exactly what makes this new research so exciting.
So let's dive right in. Today's deep dive focuses on a study about a new oral antiviral drug called Obeldesivir.
That's right. The study looked at how effective it was at treating Ebola in monkeys after they were already infected.
And that's key, right? Because we're talking about post-exposure treatment, not just prevention.
Exactly. It's about what we can do after someone has been exposed to the virus, which is crucial for containing outbreaks.
For this deep dive, we're looking at two main sources. First, we have a health news article from March 15th, 2025 that reported on the study.
And then, of course, we have the actual scientific paper. It was published in Science Advances, also in March 2025.
And you sent these to us because you're really interested in understanding what this potential breakthrough could mean for us, right?
Absolutely, especially considering how challenging Ebola has been to contain and treat in the past.
It's been a nightmare, really. So today we're going to break down this research.
Yep, we'll look at what it means, the next steps, and any questions that still remain.
So first things first, let's get a clear understanding of the study itself. What were the researchers trying to achieve?
Well, the main goal of the study was to see how effective Obeldesivir is at treating Ebola infections in monkeys after they'd already been infected.
And this is important because it could lead to easier treatments for people who've been exposed to the virus, right?
Exactly. Imagine a pill instead of intravenous infusion.
Right. No more needing specialized equipment or trained personnel.
It could be a game changer, especially in those areas with limited resources where outbreaks often happen.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about this drug, Obeldesivir. It's the oral version of Remdesivir.
Oh yeah, Remdesivir. We all remember that from the coronavirus pandemic. It was another antiviral, right?
Yep, that's right. So what kind of drug is Obeldesivir exactly?
Well, it's what's called a polymerase inhibitor.
Polymerase inhibitor, okay. What does that even mean?
So basically, the Ebola virus needs to make copies of its genetic material to spread.
Right, that makes sense.
And to do that, it uses an enzyme called polymerase. Obeldesivir blocks this enzyme.
So it stops the virus from multiplying.
You got it. It's like cutting off its supply line.
Clever. Now, how did the researchers actually test this? What was their method?
Okay, so they used two types of monkeys, Rhesus macaques and Cynomolgus macaques.
Two different kinds of monkeys.
Okay. They infected these monkeys with a very high dose of the Ebola virus.
And we're talking a particularly nasty strain, right? The Makona variant.
That's the one. And here's the interesting part. They infected them through mucosal exposure, specifically in the eye.
In the eye. Why not just inject them with the virus?
Well, they wanted to mimic how the virus might naturally enter the body.
Ah, so a more realistic scenario.
Exactly. They wanted to see how the drug would work in a situation that's closer to what happens in a real outbreak.
Got it. Makes sense. So what happened after they infected the monkeys?
Well, one day after infection, they started giving groups of these monkeys a daily dose of Obeldesivir for 10 days.
Okay, so they're giving the monkeys a pill every day for 10 days.
Yep, that's right.
And they had control groups too, right?
Of course. They had control groups that either didn't receive any treatment or received a placebo.
So basically a sugar pill, right?
Yeah, something that looks like the drug but has no actual effect.
That way, they can compare the results and see if the drug is really working.
Exactly. It's all about having a baseline for comparison.
Okay, I get it. So what did they find? What were the key results of the study?
Well, the results were pretty remarkable, actually. All 3 monkeys in the untreated control group died.
That's not surprising, I guess, considering how deadly Ebola is.
Yeah, it really highlights the seriousness of the disease. But the good news is that Obeldesivir showed really strong protective effects.
Okay, tell me more about that.
80% of the Cynomolgus macaques survived.
80%, that's pretty good.
And it gets even better. 100% of the Rhesus macaques survived.
Wow, 100%, that's incredible. But wait, why was there a difference between the two types of monkeys?
Well, that's an interesting question. The researchers observed that the virus seemed to replicate faster in the Cynomolgus monkeys.
So it was a more aggressive infection in those monkeys.
Exactly. And that might explain why the drug wasn't as effective in all of them.
It makes sense that a faster spreading infection would be harder to control.
Right. It's like trying to put out a bigger fire.
So the speed at which the virus spreads seems to play a role. What other important findings came out of this study?
Well, in the monkeys that survived, the drug was able to clear the virus from their blood.
That's great news.
And, even more encouraging, they started developing antibodies.
So their immune systems were fighting back.
Exactly. They were building up their own defenses against the virus.
That's fantastic. And did the drug cause any serious side effects?
That's another great thing about this study. The monkeys that survived didn't show any significant organ damage.
That's so important. Sometimes, even if a treatment works, it can leave behind lasting damage.
You're absolutely right. So the fact that these monkeys recovered without major organ damage is really promising.
Really encouraging. Now, I remember from the news article that the researchers used a very high dose of the virus in this study.
Oh, yeah, that was a key point. Something like 30,000 times the lethal dose for humans.
That's a massive amount. Why did they do that?
Well, they said that using such a high dose makes the positive results even more significant.
Even with the relatively small number of animals in the study.
Exactly. It's like giving the drug the ultimate test.
Okay, I see. They wanted to see if it could handle the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. Now, another question we need to consider is what happens long-term.
Right, because the study only followed the monkeys for 35 days.
Right. Did they get rid of the virus completely? Or were there any lingering effects?
Well, at the end of the study, the surviving monkeys did have low to moderate levels of the virus's genetic material in some of their tissues.
Oh, so the virus wasn't completely gone.
It's not uncommon for some viral genetic material to stick around. But here's the crucial point. They couldn't find any infectious virus in those tissues.
So the virus wasn't actively replicating anymore?
Exactly. It seems the drug was able to effectively clear the active infection.
That's good news. But it does raise questions about those lingering bits of genetic material.
Absolutely. More research is needed to understand the long-term implications. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about what all of this means for the future of Ebola treatment.
Yes, let's dive into the implications of this research. What are your thoughts?
Well, for me, the most significant thing is the potential for an oral pill. It could be a game changer in terms of practicality.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine how much easier it would be to distribute and administer pills compared to the current intravenous treatments.
It would be revolutionary, especially in those remote areas with limited resources.
No more need for refrigeration, specialized equipment, or trained personnel.
It could make treatment so much more accessible to the people who need it most.
That ease of use could be life-saving. And you mentioned earlier that Obeldesivir might have broad spectrum potential. What does that mean exactly?
So previous studies have shown that Obeldesivir might also be effective against other viruses in the same family as Ebola.
Like Sudan virus and Marburg virus.
Exactly. This study adds more evidence to that idea, suggesting that Obeldesivir could be a more general weapon against these dangerous filoviruses.
That's huge. It means one drug could potentially protect against multiple threats.
Right. It's not limited to just one specific type of Ebola virus.
That would be a major advantage over existing treatments that often target only certain Ebola species.
Absolutely. And here's another exciting possibility. This drug could be used as a preventative measure after exposure.
Oh, like a post-exposure prophylaxis.
Exactly. The fact that it worked even when treatment started a whole day after infection is really encouraging.
It suggests that it could be given to people who are at high risk, like healthcare workers or family members of infected individuals.
And that could be a game changer in controlling outbreaks.
Imagine being able to protect people even after they've been exposed to the virus.
It could break the chain of transmission and potentially save countless lives.
Absolutely. Now, the scientific paper also mentioned the possibility of using this drug alongside vaccines.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. How would that work?
Well, the Ebola vaccine that we have now takes about 10 days to provide full protection.
Right, it takes time for the immune system to build up those defenses.
Exactly, but Obeldesivir could potentially bridge that gap.
So it would provide immediate protection while the vaccine is doing its work.
That's the idea. It's like having a temporary shield until the long-term defenses are in place.
That could be a really powerful combination. Now, of course, we have to be realistic. Every study has its limitations.
Right. We can't get ahead of ourselves. What are some of the key limitations we should be aware of?
Well, first and foremost, this study was done on monkeys, not humans.
That's always a crucial consideration with preclinical research.
While monkeys are similar to us biologically, we can't be certain that the results will be exactly the same in humans.
Right, we need human clinical trials to confirm these findings.
Absolutely. And another limitation is the sample size.
The number of monkeys in the study was relatively small.
Though the researchers argued that the high viral dose made the results statistically meaningful even with a small group.
Yeah, I remember reading that. But larger studies would definitely give us more confidence.
Absolutely. And then there's the issue of timing.
Right, the treatment started just 24 hours after infection.
That might not be realistic in a real outbreak scenario.
There might be delays in diagnosis or getting the medication to people.
Exactly. We need to know how effective Obeldesivir would be if treatment is delayed.
That's crucial for understanding its real-world applicability.
Another thing to keep in mind is that the study only followed the monkeys for 35 days.
That's not a very long time.
It tells us about the immediate effects, but we don't know about any long-term consequences.
Both of the infection itself or the drug.
Right. More research is needed to assess the long-term safety and effectiveness of Obeldesivir.
Absolutely. We also can't ignore the fact that one of the treated monkeys died.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. One of the Cynomolgus monkeys that received Obeldesivir died on day 23.
And even though the virus had been cleared from its blood, they found viral genetic material in some of its tissues.
And the monkey developed neurological complications.
That's a stark reminder that Ebola is a complex and unpredictable disease.
It highlights that even though Obeldesivir is promising, it might not be a cure-all.
More research is definitely needed to fully understand this disease and how to treat it.
Absolutely. Now let's shift our focus to what the experts have to say about this research.
Yeah, let's hear what the people on the front lines think.
The news article quoted Dr. Thomas Geisbert, the lead researcher on the study.
What were his key takeaways?
Well, he stressed that the main goal was to develop a more practical and user-friendly treatment for Ebola.
Easier to use, easier to distribute.
Exactly. And he really emphasized the broad-spectrum potential of Obeldesivir.
That it could be effective against multiple filoviruses, not just one specific type of Ebola.
That's a huge advantage over existing treatments.
It could revolutionize our response to outbreaks.
Absolutely. And Dr. Geisbert also talked about the importance of funding for this kind of research.
That's so crucial. We need continued investment to drive progress.
He expressed concern about potential funding cuts.
Yeah, that would be a major setback.
He highlighted that most of the funding for Ebola drug and vaccine development comes from government sources.
So government support is essential for continuing this important work.
Absolutely. Now let's turn our attention to the scientific paper itself.
What other insights did the researchers share in the paper?
Well, they reiterated the advantages of oral antivirals over intravenous drugs.
Easier to store, distribute, administer.
Exactly. All critical factors in managing an outbreak effectively.
They also strongly supported the use of Obeldesivir as a post-exposure prophylaxis.
With broad activity against the whole filovirus family.
So it could potentially protect against a range of these deadly viruses.
That's right. And they also delved into how the drug might be working on a biological level.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Their analysis suggested that Obeldesivir might be helping the body develop its own immune defenses.
So it's not just directly attacking the virus, but also boosting the immune response.
Exactly. And it seems to be doing this while also reducing excessive inflammation.
Which is often a fatal complication in severe Ebola cases.
Right. So the drug seems to be helping the immune system fight the virus in a more balanced way.
That's a really encouraging finding.
It suggests that Obeldesivir might not just be treating the symptoms, but actually helping the body heal itself.
That's a powerful combination. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for you?
For me, it's the hope that this research offers, the possibility of a more accessible and effective way to fight this terrifying disease.
Obeldesivir is now moving into phase 2 clinical trials for Marburg virus.
Which is a close relative of Ebola.
If it proves successful in humans, it could transform how we approach these deadly outbreaks.
Absolutely. This research is a powerful reminder of the importance of scientific investigation and global health security.
And the need for continued investment in these life-saving endeavors.
What are your thoughts on this development? What questions does it raise for you?
Perhaps you're interested in learning more about past Ebola outbreaks or the science behind antiviral drug development.
This deep dive has hopefully given you some valuable insights and sparked your curiosity.
We encourage you to keep exploring these important topics. Until our next deep dive, stay curious.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by Todo Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.